Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Mr. Bhagavad Paramahansa, Bhagavadgitaclass, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Bhagavadgitaclass, Ashtotar, the Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled... Damodar Kumar, don't go anywhere. Don't leave the temple now. Just let me finish this. All glories to the assembled devotees. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. Prabhu, there's a draft in here somewhere. Can you try to find one? Is it coming down that stairs? Yeah. See if you can find a door open there or the ceiling open. They have a big thing in the roof. Big. Yeah. Believe me. Yes, there's a little ladder. You climb up, you get onto the roof. And sometimes they leave the whole thing open. You've seen it? It's a cranker. It's a special thing. That's where the wind is coming down from. Ventilation. Yeah. No heat, just ventilation. Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Page 134. 134. On this 4th day of February 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are at the end of chapter 2, entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. Verse number 70, page 134. Apuryamana machala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakama kami apuryamana machala pratishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayang pravishanti sarve Sashanti mapnoti na kama kami. Page 1, 3, 4. 134. Apuyamanam achalapatishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakama kami. Go ahead, Damodar. Apuyamanam achalapatishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakama kami. Apuyamanam achalapatishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti nakama kami. Damodar, can you run back, make sure there's as many walls and doors between us and the noise as possible? Thank you. Okay, word by word meanings. Apuyamanam, always being filled. Achalapatishtam, steadily situated. Samudram, the ocean. Apaha, waters. Pravishanti, enter. Yadvat, as. Tadvat, so. Kamaha, desires. Yam, unto whom. Pravishanti, enter. Sarve, all. Saha, that person. Shantim, peace. Apnoti, achieves. Na, not. Kamakami, one who desires to fulfill desires. One who desires to fulfill desires. Okay. Translation. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Report. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same, steady. It is not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna-conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna-conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who want to fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruitive workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So the example of the ocean is very pertinent, especially to us who are right nearby the Pacific Ocean, which means peaceful. Now, apparently when the first, I forget who it was, some Spanish guy first ran into this ocean, or he sailed into it was much more peaceful than the Atlantic. The Atlantic was known for big storms And Pacific, at least the part that he saw, was much more peaceful, so he named it the Pacific Ocean. But the principle that Krishna is enunciating here is that a truly self-realized Krishna-conscious devotee, even though the stimuli for sense gratification may be there, that's what it means by the flow of desires. There's a little bit of ambiguity here. The ocean is there, the mind of the great devotee is there, and there's some stimulus for desires, a beautiful woman or whatever it may be. But it never really stimulates a desire in the heart. The heart is always filled with, overfilled with the desires to serve Krishna. The bliss is there. And so the happiness or the pleasure that comes from sense gratification is negated completely. And therefore, a few verses back, we had the verse in the purport quoting from Sri Yamunacharya. Yadavadi mamacheta Krishna pada aravinde navanavara sadhaman yudyatam rantum asit tadavadi badanadi sangame smaryamane bhavati bhukipakaru sushtu nishtivanancha. So this great king, a formerly great king, Yamunacharya, who is now a great devotee, he's revealing his mind to us. And he's saying that ever since I have been at this high level of devotion, doesn't mention like that, but ever since I've been enjoying at every moment the rasa, the pleasure of serving Krishna's lotus feet, now, inevitably, because of a lifetime experience, he occasionally remembers his experience with women, and the very thought of that association and that so-called pleasure makes him curl his mouth and just taste, and he spits at the thought. So in other words, that's exactly illustrating this point. He has become like an ocean because he's completely free of any desires, even for liberation. This is Prabhupada's referencing a verse here that's spoken by Lord Chaitanya, which says, Krishna bhakti nishkama ataeva shanta. Bhukti mukti siddhi kami sakali ashanta. So a kami is one who's after a kama, who's after fulfillment of material desires. So the first line says, the Krishna bhakta, who is nishkama, who has no material desires, is therefore peaceful. And indeed, in the next verse, it'll be defined, after all of these verses, really summing up the characteristics of someone whose consciousness is steady, which is what the whole passage is about. So Krishna Bhakta means pure Krishna devotee. And Nishkama, therefore, Ateyeva Shanta. Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami. A Kami is one who desires something. Bhukti, vast majority, ordinary sense gratification with its unlimited varieties, cannot be peaceful. Because even if you happen to be at this moment enjoying one of those material sense gratifications, you know that it's temporary and that there's a downside, as Krishna says in chapter 5. The more intense your material enjoyment, the more intense your suffering. Material life means little flickering chapala sukha and long time suffering. You know, very little flickering, flash in a pan, it's a long time suffering. And so that's a cause of anxiety, even while you're enjoying underneath, oh boy, this can't last and it's going to bring a bad reaction. So the jnanis, they know this is stupid. So I'm going to desire liberation from the bonds of material life and all of these. So that's the mukti kami. You got the bhukti kami, then you have the mukti kamis. So, but that's also material. Desiring one's own comfort means freedom from pain, from physical, mental, and emotional pain, is also a material desire. And so they can't be peaceful either, because even if they happen to, you have to close the door, either in or out. They're first of all, if they haven't achieved their mukti yet, therefore they're in anxiety whether they can actually achieve it. And if they do achieve some measure of liberation from material desire and agitation, that's the aruha krichena param padam. They've achieved the param padam, brahmabhuta, sort of. But they're not secure there, because it's unnatural. There's no Krishna, there's no holy name, there's no prasadam, there's no association, there's no anything. It's just the white light. I'm free. No longer will I have to worry about a material body. But that's illusion, because that's an unnatural position for the soul. We're persons. We have transcendental senses and desires to serve Krishna. That's all been repressed in the name of, because they're averse to serving Krishna. They don't have faith in the Lord. They're envious. So they're also Ashanta. Even in their bliss of Brahmananda, there's a little bit of undertow of worry. Can I keep this position? Because how long can I repress these desires? And they can't. Eventually they come down. Param padam tatat patantya dho anadvita yushmadangraya. The demigods pray in chapter 2, the 10th canto, to Krishna in the womb. Others besides the bhaktas, they think they're liberated. Vimukta manina. But actually, even the few who, through kritrena, very severe austerities, can rise up to parampadam, brahmabhuta, patantya do, they also fall down because they're averse to serving your lotus feet. So now you have the bhukti kamis and the mukti kamis, they're not peaceful. And then you have the siddhi kamis, the ashtanga yogis, who are another really species of bhukti kamis, because they're trying to enjoy some refined, astral travel and property siddhi, and smaller than the smallest and larger than the largest. You can't be happy with that. And we've seen some of the history in the Srimad Bhagavatam of great yogis who, they were in anxiety. Durvasa Muni, they know, but I don't think you know what Durvasa means? Can't live with them. You know the past with Ambarish. Yeah, but I'm saying his very name, Durvasa, I thought that it meant that his clothes were far away, that he was naked. But it means that that you can't live with him because he's always agitated. Am I getting enough respect? They're not respecting me enough. That's not its peaceful mind. So the siddhi kamis also, sakali ashanta. This is Lord Chaitanya's, but Krishna bhakta nishkama ateva shanta. That's exactly what this verse is all about. So the desires are flowing, means the stimuli for sense gratification may be flowing in. I always think of Prabhupada walking down Broadway, the middle of Manhattan. As soon as he arrived in Boston, he came to Boston in September 15, 17, and then he came down to New York in the long trip, the Jaladuda. He saw Boston and he wrote this poem. How are these people going to know? How are they going to receive this knowledge? They're all in the modes of passion and ignorance. He could just see by the skyscrapers and the hustle bustle of Boston. What to speak of Manhattan, New York. So anyway, so Prabhupada spent months and months in New York City. But even though there's so many desires coming in, there's so many temptations, and there's also a lot of negative things, which is the flip side of it, he was always serene in his perfect Krishna consciousness. So that's the proof, the indication of a real advanced soul, is that you can't induce him to sense gratification. We have the perfect example of Haridas Thakur as a young man also. Unlike Vishwamitra or Saubhari Muni or all these yogis who were induced to get married, even though they were powerful yogis, Haridas Thakur was simply chanting Hare Krishna. He had no education, he didn't know the Shastras, so he was just chanting Hare Krishna. And then twice he was seduced, they tried to seduce him. Once with this envious Brahmin, Ramchandra Khan, was it, I think, or something. Ramchandra Puri was someone else. And he sent a prostitute, a very fortunate prostitute. She volunteered to seduce Haridas Thakur in the middle of the night. At that time he was a young man, he was just chanting Hare Krishna. And she comes and does what prostitutes do, I want to be with you. And he says, yes, no problem, but I have to finish my rounds. I just have to finish my rounds. I've taken a vow to chant 1 billion names or whatever, 1 million names this month, and I'm almost done. So you just sit there. We're done. I'll be done soon. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The sun comes up, so she gets restless. Oh, I'm so sorry. You just come back tonight, and I'm almost done. And so she comes back. Hare Krishna. So she's bored. Waiting. Says, "Oh, I might as well chant also Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna." So she's chanting in association with Haridas Thakur, and she's becoming purified. Again, the sun rises. He apologizes. He said, one more night. So she comes back, and by this time, and then she realizes what's going on, and she surrendered. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I knew what it was all about. The first night I would have left, but to save you, I came and purified." So she surrendered. You just sit in that little hut. You plant tulsi. You just chant. Everything will be taken care of. She became a great devotee. So, and then again it said, Maya Devi herself came personally to try to seduce him, and he couldn't be moved. So that's Apuryamanam Achala Prachistam, situated just like the oceanic composure, And that's what he's winding up this chapter describing. And in the next verse he summarizes the whole principle. Shall I go on? Let's do one more verse. Vihaya kaman yaksarvan pumangs chadati nikspriha nirmamo nadahankara sashanti madigachati. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship, and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. Purport: to become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself, and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world, is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense satisfaction. Actually, what that means is that the reason Arjuna declined to fight was because of his own sense satisfaction. That's what Prabhupada means there. But when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. Real desirelessness is desire for the satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. Artificial attempt. That's what that other verse is about. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but he doesn't have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna, Ishavasyamidang sarvam, and therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely knowing perfectly well that every living entity is an eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity, and that the eternal position of the living entity is therefore never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principle of real peace. So the whole platform is that every moment to see oneself as a servant of Krishna. And really that can only be sustained as a moment-by-moment thing is if there is deep love for Krishna. Then the most pleasurable thing is not to use something for oneself, but to give it to the beloved, and as an act of love. It's just like the example of the mother with the newborn child, So if the child is showing a little bit, cold, then she'll find some blanket to cover. If the only blanket she has is her own blanket, no, that's fine. Right? Because the whole focus is on the child. There's this deep bond of love there. And so that making the child warm is a deeper happiness than being warm herself. That's the thing. So that constant consciousness, if it's there, that it's not easy to keep it, steady, but that's what it takes to come to the point of nishta and ruchi and asakti. So that every act, this verse, you may know this verse because I heard this is very popular in India. Kayena bacha manasendriyava. Have you heard that word? Is it? Kayena bacha manasendriyava buddhyatmanava nusasa svabhavat kadoti yadyat sakalam padasmai narayana-yeti samarpayeta. Right? So this is really an expansion of what Krishna says in the 9th chapter. Yat karoshi, yadashnasi, yadjuhosi dadasi. Whatever you eat, whatever you do, whatever you offer, do it as a sacrifice to me. But this one, it just covers everything, beginning with the body. Whatever activities you perform with the body, kayana, with your words, with your mind, with your senses, with your intelligence, with your very self, as you have received them. In other words, we all have these, some say. Buddhyatmanava anusata swabhavat, according to your own nature. Karoti yadyat sakalam pada, all of the activities, you think, Narayana-yeti, this is for Narayan. this is for Krishna. I'm doing this. I'm walking from this place to that place. Every step is for Krishna. It's an act of Krishna. Just like if you're doing deity worship, every motion is important. It's how you tie the thing and how you move it. And what you've done before to make yourself clean and everything. So it's all of a piece of the service. Why am I soaping myself in the shower? For Krishna. I have to get down to the arti to do the puja. In other words, that's the motivation. If in every breath you're thinking, oh, this is an offering to Krishna, and it really is, and in that offering you're feeling the exchange of reciprocation from Krishna because you're fully conscious of Krishna, his form, qualities, pastimes, then how is there any room for sense gratification? You're already enjoying at such a high level, and Krishna is reciprocating. That's bhakti. It gives the most complete, absolute vairagya, which is really what we're after, not so much renunciation. Renunciation literally means in English to give up something, physically give it up. Not indulgent. But we don't give it up. We take it on. If it's useful for Krishna's service, we want to use it. It's the heart that counts. It's the consciousness with which you do it. This is not mine. This is not my money. I have to spend it for Krishna. That was Prabhupada's example. Every penny, every farthing. He came with nothing, 3 rupees, whatever it was, a few rupees, and he ended up with millions. But whether he had the 3 rupees or the millions, it was all for Krishna. And because of that, he was careful to spend every penny for Krishna when he first came. Therefore, he eventually had unlimited millions to spend for Krishna. Hare Krishna, Rami. Yeah, she's been through here. She's not here right now. She did show herself, but she has a tendency to move around. So she's somewhere in the compound. All right, let's finish the chapter. We can do it. Esha Brahmi Stiti Parta Nainam Prapa Vimuyati Stitvasyam Antakalepi Brahmanivanam Richati. That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Purport. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Katvanga Maharaj attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering unto Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material life. But the Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord. Since both of them are on the absolute plane, to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman, and one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmi Stiti means not on the platform of material activities. Devotional service of the Lord is accepted in the Bhagavad Gita as the liberated stage, Sagunan Samatityaitan Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate. Therefore, Brahmi Stiti is liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized this second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as being the contents for the whole text. In the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the contents for the complete text. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of its contents. So here's kind of a bit of a shocker. We're talking about Brahma Nirvana. Nirvana, of course, reminds us of Buddhism, and Prabhupada talks about Buddhism here. So Arjuna will be a little puzzled at the beginning of this chapter, and also at the beginning of the 5th chapter, because Brahma Nirvana seems completely antithetical to fighting on the battlefield. Where is there any nirvana, Brahmana? Where is there any peace? So Arjuna, he says, well, this is ambiguous words. Vyamashreina vivakena. Why do you want to engage me in this horrible, we use the word gora in the next verse, warfare? If we're talking about Brahma Nirvana and Shanti, what it seems to could kind of be. So that's, Krishna will explain that, no, activity and sacrifice in Krishna consciousness is the same thing. The whole point is you can be as active as anything, but still be peaceful. If you're not fearful because you're acting on Krishna's behalf and you're on a transcendental platform. And this is what Arjuna eventually did. He acted completely against his own gut reaction in the 1st chapter, which was he didn't want to have anything to do with the death of his beloved teacher and grandfather and all his friends. But he surrendered because he eventually, in Kadashe Vachanantabhati, the last one, I will do as you say, because he was on a higher plane. He was acting on Krishna consciousness beyond the material plane. So this Brahma Nirvana, this will come up again and again in the 5th chapter, this idea of Brahma Nirvana. Simply everything merges into Brahman. If it's all offered to Krishna, it's all spiritual, it's not attracting you, it's not disturbing your underlying peace, like that, no matter what you're doing. So it's a mystery, but it can be understood if we apply our minds and we surrender to Prabhupada's wonderful purports and his explanations. Okay, so shall we launch into chapter 3? We have a few minutes. Why not? Beginning Karma Yoga, chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Arjuna Vacha Jayasi Chet Karma Naste Muta Buddhir Janardana Tatkin Karmani Gore Mam Niyodi Yasikeshava. Arjuna said, O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than food of work? Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, has very elaborately described the constitution of the soul in the previous chapter, with a view to delivering his intimate friend Arjuna from the ocean of material grief. And the path of realization has been recommended, Buddhi Yoga, or Krishna consciousness. Sometimes Krishna consciousness is misunderstood to be inertia, and one with such a misunderstanding often withdraws to a secluded place to become fully Krishna conscious by chanting the holy name of the Lord Krishna. But without being trained in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, it is not advisable to chant the holy name of Krishna in a secluded place, where one may acquire only cheap adoration from the innocent public. Arjuna also thought of Krishna consciousness, or Buddhi Yoga, or intelligence and spiritual advancement of knowledge, as something like retirement from active life and the practice of penance and austerity at a secluded place. In other words, he wanted to skillfully avoid the fighting by using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. But as a sincere student, he placed the matter before his master and questioned Krishna as to his best course of action. Krishna as to his, Arjuna's, best course of action. In answer, Lord Krishna elaborately explained Karma Yoga, or work in Krishna consciousness, in this 3rd chapter. So this Karma Yoga, really that's a lot of what we do in Krishna consciousness at first. Because to constantly remember Krishna at every moment is not so easy. We're working toward that, chanting Hare Krishna. But there's so much to do for Krishna. And if you work for Krishna and at the same time chant Hare Krishna, and you understand even periodically, oh, we're doing this for Krishna, I'm not doing it for any salary, then that's purifying. Plus, you're not getting any material karmic reaction. That's the big thing. You're getting free from previous karmic reactions and you're not incurring any new ones. This is called naishkarmya, or akarma. Although active, you're not actually performing karma in the traditional sense because there's no reactions. It's all bhakti. So that will be explained here. And the key verse coming up, text 9, Yagyartat kamanon yatra loko yam karma bandhana. Sacrifice, work must be performed as a sacrifice for Vishnu, otherwise work binds one in this material world. So, to make every one of your activities a sacrifice for Vishnu, that's the task. And it turns into, okay, it's a sacrifice. Okay, I got to sacrifice, But because it's for Krishna, it's a beautiful, blue boy with the flute, it turns into a loving exchange. It starts out as the very same activity may be a sacrifice if you're feeling, oh, I'm sacrificing now. Okay, I know I have to sacrifice this. But after some time, if you're really Krishna conscious, it's not a sacrifice anymore. Sacrifice implies some austerity to it, right? You're giving up something. But you realize, oh, what I've given up is all the pain and suffering, birth, old age, disease, and death. That's why I want to give that up. But what I've graduated to is to have a chance to really, at every moment, serve my most beloved Krishna. And that sacrifice is welcome. That's the whole idea. The service is welcome. Okay, so these are apparently equivocal words, because Krishna's, be steady in intelligence, be, free, withdraw the senses like the tortoise if they're not in use. Well, okay, Arjuna wants to withdraw the senses. He doesn't want to do any of this. What's the matter with his idea? Because it's not what Krishna wants. Vyamashreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tadekam vadanishchitya yena shreyo hamapnuvan apnuyam. My intelligence is bewildered, Arjuna says, by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. Purport. In the previous chapter, as a prelude to the Bhagavad Gita, many different paths were explained, such as Sankhya Yoga, Buddhi Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruit of desire, and the position of the neophyte. This was all presented unsystematically. A more organized outline of the path would be necessary for action and understanding. Arjuna, therefore, wanted to clear up these apparently confusing matters so that any common man could accept them without misinterpretation. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness either by inertia or by active service. In other words, by his questions he is clearing the path of Krishna consciousness for all students who seriously want to understand the mystery of the Bhagavad Gita. So as Krishna says in the 6th chapter, at the beginning, there's a lot of work to do. The yogi is very active. Now, even the yogi in the Himalayas, he's got a lot of asanas to perform, got a lot of pranayama to do, got to work on that, and then eventually you can just sit. But for the bhakta, there's also a lot to do, right? Prabhupada he created the ISKCON society so that we just have a lot to do all day, because nobody's going to be able to sit and chant Hare Krishna. He tried. He told them to chant 64 rounds. At the rate that they were chanting at that time, and even today, believe me, I timed it. If you chant 5 minutes a round, which nobody does because it's like less than 3 seconds a mantra, can you chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, 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 in 3 seconds? No. But, so at least it takes 6-7 hours of chanting, or even 8 hours to complete 64 rounds at Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You're going to chant like that? And they couldn't do it. They came back to Prabhupada. He said that's the standard in Gaudiya Math. I don't know how many were doing it, but that was the standard. If you want us to, if you want to do anything else, you have to give us, we can't do it 64. So he said 32. 32 was too much, so he came down to 16. Without fail, minimum. So, what to do with the rest of the day? 2 hours of chanting. Now what? Okay, we'll put out this magazine. Okay, go out on Harinam. Okay, do this, sell this. Work for Krishna. Clean up, learn to cook. There's something to do. Keep it doing. All as a sacrifice for Vishnu. As well. So, and then if you're remembering Krishna, you're trying to remember Krishna because you're working. It's obviously for Krishna. It helps you remember Krishna. It keeps you out of trouble. That's how the society is developed, and it's still going on in that. It's genius. It's ingenious way. Otherwise, if you just give the beads and say, now go and chant 64 rounds, no, there'll be no society. So, this is Lord Chaitanya's movement. So this karma yoga, when it's more purified and your mind becomes more purified, it turns into bhakti yoga. The gopis are doing all kinds of activities. They're not idle. They're not meditating. They're all churning and chanting and dancing and everything else. All right, let's read some Krishna book. Hare Krishna. I guess it was too rainy for Marcy tonight. All right. Okay. So, we'll continue with Krishna book. Most accessible. Here's Krishna book. Okay. So, okay. So we're in the middle of this chapter called Aghasura killed. Now, most of you have avoided the early mispronunciations, but this demon was known as Aghasura for many, many years. But the word Agha means sinful. You see? So he's a sinful demon, Aghasura. And he personified sin is a snake, who'll bite you for no reason, So these are all yogis, demonic yogis who have this shape-shifting ability. So that's why they take all these different forms. They think they're invincible, 8-mile-long python. How can But eventually Krishna will kill him. So now we're at the stage where he's out with his cowherd boys, and they see this big snake. They don't know what it is at first, and then they start. Well, that looks like I think it's a snake. So that's what this describing what they saw, what the boys saw, and what Krishna saw. The demon, in the shape of a big fat serpent, expanded his lips from land to sky. His lower lip was touching the ground, and his upper lip was touching the clouds. His jaws appeared like a big mountain cave, without limitation. And his teeth appeared just like mountain summits. His tongue appeared to be a broad traffic way, and he was breathing just like a hurricane. His eyes were blazing like fire. At first the boys thought that the demon was a statue, but after examining it they saw that it was a big serpent lying down on the road and widening his mouth. So this is a python, and they just wait. The boys began to talk among themselves. "Dear friends, this figure appears to be a great animal, and he's sitting in such a posture just to swallow us all. Just see, is it not a big snake that has widened his mouth to eat all of us?" One of them said, "Yes, what you say is true. This animal's upper lip appears to be just like the sunshine, and its lower lip is just like the reflection of red sunshine on the ground. Dear friends, just look at the right and left-hand side of the mouth of the animal. Its mouth appears to be like a big mountain cave, and its height can't be estimated. The chin is also raised just like a mountain summit. That long highway appears to be its tongue, and inside the mouth it is as dark as a mountain cave. The hot wind that's blowing like a hurricane is his breathing, and that fishy bad smell coming out from his mouth is the smell of his intestines." Then they further consulted among themselves. If we all at one time entered into the mouth of this great serpent, how could it possibly swallow all of us? And even if it were to swallow all of us at once, it could not swallow Krishna. Krishna will immediately kill him as he did Bakasura. So the baka is not a duck. Have you seen a baka bird in India? It's not a duck with a flat bill, right? It's more like a little heron, like a sharp beak. Yeah. So that's Bakasura. So Krishna had already killed Bakasura, who was related to Aghasura. There's a family, Putana, Aghasura, and Bakasura. They're all, brother and sister demons. Talking in this way, all the boys looked at the beautiful lotus-like face of Krishna, and they began to clap and smile. And as they marched forward and entered the mouth of the and so they marched forward and entered the mouth of the gigantic serpent. Meanwhile, Krishna, who is the supersoul within everyone's heart, could understand that the big statuesque figure was a demon. The boys didn't know this, however, and thus while Krishna was planning how to stop the destruction of his intimate friends, all the boys, along with their calves, entered the mouth of the serpent. But Krishna didn't enter. The demon was awaiting Krishna's entrance, and he was thinking, everyone has entered except Krishna, who has killed my brother and sister. They already Putin and Bakasura were dead, so now he was very angry. Krishna is the assurance of safety to everyone. But when he saw that his friends were already out of his hands and were lying within the belly of a great serpent, he became momentarily aggrieved. He was also struck with wonder at how the external energy works so wonderfully. He then began to consider how he could kill the demon and at the same time save the boys and calves. Although there was no factual concern on Krishna's part, he was thinking like that. Finally, after some deliberation, he also entered the mouth of the demon. When Krishna entered, all the demigods who had gathered to see the fun and who were hiding within the clouds expressed their feelings with the words, "Alas, alas!" At the same time, all the friends of Aghasura, especially Kamsa, who were all accustomed to eating flesh and blood, expressed their jubilation, understanding that Krishna had also entered the mouth of the demon. While the demon was trying to smash Krishna and his companions, Krishna heard the demigods crying, "Alas, alas!" and he immediately began to expand himself within the throat of the demon. Although he had a gigantic body, the demon choked by the expanding of Krishna. His big eyes moved violently, and he quickly suffocated. His life air could not come out from any source, and ultimately it burst out of a hole in the upper part of his head. In the upper part of his skull. Thus his life air passed off. After the demon was dead, Krishna, with his transcendental glance alone, brought all the boys and calves back to consciousness. In other words, he brought them back to life, and came with them out of the mouth of the demon. While Krishna was within the mouth of Aghasura, the demon's spirit soul came out like a dazzling light, illuminating all directions, and waited in the sky. As soon as Krishna came out of the mouth of the demon and with his calves and friends, that glittering effulgent light immediately merged into the body of Krishna within the vision of all the demigods. The demigods became overwhelmed with joy and showered flowers on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and thus they worshipped him. The denizens of heaven danced in jubilation, and the denizens in Gandharva-loka offered various kinds of prayers. Drummers beat drums in jubilation. The Brahmins recited Vedic hymns, and all the devotees of the Lord chanted the words, "Jai, Jai! All glories to the Supreme Personality of Godhead." When Lord Brahma heard those auspicious vibrations, which sounded throughout the higher planetary system, he immediately came down to see what had happened. He saw that the demon was killed, and he was struck with wonder at the uncommon, glorious pastimes of the Personality of Godhead. The gigantic mouth of the demon remained in an open position for many days, and gradually dried up. It remained a spot of pleasure pastimes for all the coward boys. The killing of Aghasura took place when Krishna and all his boyfriends were under 5 years old. Children under 5 years old are called Kaumara. From 5 years up to the 10th year, they are called Pauganda. And from the 10th year up to the 15th year, they are called Kaishora. After the 15th year, the boys are called youths, Yovana. For 1 year, there was no discussion of the incident of the Aghasura demon in the village of Braj. But when the boys attained their 6th year, they informed their parents of the incident with great wonder. For Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is far greater than such demigods as Brahma, it's not at all difficult to award one with the opportunity of merging with his eternal body. This he awarded to Aghasura. Aghasura was certainly the most sinful living entity, and it is not possible for the sinful to merge into the existence of the Absolute Truth. But in this particular case, because Krishna entered into Aghasura's body, the demon became fully cleansed of all sinful reactions. Persons constantly thinking of the eternal form of the Lord in the shape of the deity or in the shape of a mental form are awarded the transcendental benediction of entering into the kingdom of God and associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we can just imagine the elevated position of someone like Aghasura, into whose body the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, personally entered. Great sages, meditators, and devotees constantly keep the form of the Lord within their hearts, or they see the deity form of the Lord in the temples. In that way they become liberated from all material contamination, and at the end of the body enter into the kingdom of God. This perfection is possible simply by keeping the form of the Lord within the mind. But in the case of Aghasura, the Supreme Lord personally entered his body. Aghasura's position was therefore greater than the ordinary devotees or the greatest yogis. King Parikshit, who was engaged in hearing the transcendental pastimes of Krishna, who had saved the life of Maharaj Parikshit while he was in the womb of his mother, became more and more interested to hear about him. And thus he questioned the sage Shukadeva Goswami, who was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam before the king. King Parikshit was a bit astonished to understand that the killing of Aghasura demon was not discussed for a whole year until after the boys had attained the Pauganda age. King Parikshit was very inquisitive to learn about this, for he was sure that such an incident was due to the working of Krishna's different energies. Generally, the Kshatriyas, or administrative class, are always busy with their political affairs, and they have very little chance to hear about the transcendental pastimes of Krishna. But while King Parikshit was hearing these transcendental pastimes, he considered himself to be very fortunate, because not only was he hearing Krishna's pastimes, but he was doing so from Shukadeva Goswami, the greatest authority on Srimad Bhagavatam. Thus, being requested by Maharaj Parikshit, Shukadeva continued to speak about the transcendental pastimes of Krishna in the matter of his form, qualities, fame, and paraphernalia. Thus ends Bhaktivedanta purport of 12th chapter of Krishna, the killing of the Aghasura demon. And next is chapter 13, Brahma steals the boys and calves. But I want to try to share something with you if I can find it. And this is a wonderful verse by Rupa Goswami about this killing of Aghasura. Here we go. Yes. I think that's it. Okay. Oh, I have to put that. Okay. Yes. There it is. Next. Yes. Okay. So here's the verse. Abasopi shuti parisadam thabakhinasya namna sarpan alpam lagutadamagastom amoksham karoti naita chittam sakabita kilarantaralam pravishto yad govinda swayamyamagham mokshayasya ekameva. Entering the ear, even the dim reflection of your holy name, O Krishna, entering the ear, even the dim reflection of your holy name removes a great host of sins. O Govinda, this is not surprising, for with all your friends you personally entered the sinful Aga demon and gave him liberation. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.